Welcome to the podcast. I'm Spencer Sivey, Vice President of Sales at SOCi.ai, and today I'm joined by two people who I think are recognizable names and faces in our industry. Dana Pate is the founder and CEO of Stitch Marketing. You may have seen her on stage at industry conferences like AIM or NAA. As a brand experience strategist in multifamily, Dana is a consultant for corporate branding and repositioning, portfolio assessments, and strategic marketing planning. Dana, thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
Very good. Also joining the discussion is Josh Glastein, founder of Glas Haus Partners, which is an independent consulting firm focused on technology advisory in the real estate space. He works closely with property management companies, prop tech startups, and venture funds. He partners with clients to make sure they're making smart tech decisions that are actually going to feel real growth. So glad both of you guys can join me today. What I'd like to do is just set the stage here in terms of what I want to cover. I think there's folks that are listening to these podcasts that really need some guidance and some information from the leaders out there who are in it day to day. So a couple of things I want to focus on. I want to unpack what AI transformation really looks like inside property management organizations as a current state and basically through your lens. Also, want to talk through what you've seen that marketing teams are scrambling to solve. That should be fun. And then what leaders should be considering, but they aren't, as it relates to AI adoption and transformation. So look, there's a lot of leaders out there that are equally excited, slightly uneasy about how fast this AI revolution is moving. That's what I found. And so I think this conversation can really help them cut through the noise and figure out how to scale smarter. So just first of all, both of you come from kind of a different background. I mean, similar, obviously same industries, but a little bit more IT marketing for you, Dana. How does that shape how you think about technology and transformation? Maybe Dana, you could kick us off.
Yeah, you want me to kickstart? Yeah. So I started my career on site. So when someone says tech transformation, I don't necessarily picture dashboards and AI workflows. I immediately picture a 23-year-old Dana in the leasing office on like a very busy Saturday with like juggling the phone calls, the tour walk-ins, the constant pinging of email notifications, very likely like a broken printer fax machine, right? They're like sending specials through the line. And that foundation of having those years on site really shaped not only how I approach technology, but really anything shiny and new associated with change management, right? Like as my career evolved, my responsibility shifted from answering the leads on site to generating the demand when I switched into more of a corporate marketing role. And marketing teams today are really balancing so much like ILS platforms, paid ads, websites, AI chat, all these analytics dashboards, integration nightmares, and everything in between. And so if the systems behind the traffic aren't connected or easy to use, all we've really done in our quest for tech transformation has made it more chaotic for on-site teams to do their job and for 23-year-old Dana, right, to do her job on site. So yes, I care about how we can use technology to help prospects find us more effectively, how we can move those leads really more efficiently down the sales funnel, and how those conversion metrics can be improved. But I'm really always asking foundationally, like, what does this look like in the leasing office? Does this make responding to leads faster? Does it make the information clearer? Does it remove or add friction to the leasing process? Again, from a marketing perspective, that's what I'm hyper focused on, because really tech transformation to me, it's not about adding tools, but it's about aligning marketing, operations, technology, and simplifying and streamlining that workflow more than, again, just another login.
Super grassroots. I love it.
Yes.
I bet people eat that up because that's, I mean, the noise and the, I guess, friction, I guess, is probably the right word to say, is so heavy out there, we find. So that's really great information. I think that's going to lead us into some good conversations as well. Josh, tell me about your side and kind of.
I definitely think Dana expressed it really well. So coming from the technology leadership side, I really think about systems and ecosystems as a whole and what the outcomes are that we're trying to produce. Ultimately, you mentioned friction, Spencer, and I think that's really what we want to do is reduce the friction between all the connecting systems. There are so many different pieces at play and different moving parts that we have to go through, both managing the process as well as our prospects and residents as they experience the process of renting an apartment. And I think we have to consider all of those things and how those pieces are connected and how data moves across those systems.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's changing, at a lightning pace. And we have to make sure that we are enabling the newest technologies so that we are able to scale, and grow volume without necessarily increasing costs. There's so much pressure to do things at scale without changing your team size, to improve your resident experience without adding cost, and to make all of your systems work together and not introduce friction or integration issues. And that's really hard to do.
Yeah. Well, that probably leads into this particular question. When you run into your clients or you source your clients, they're looking for help today. What's usually the trigger? I mean, is it a fear of AI? Is it pressure from leadership, the cost savings, performance? What do you usually find as the trigger?
Yeah, for me, it's all of the above, and it's pain, more or less. It's never just curiosity. Oh, I just want to see what you think about the situation that I'm dealing with. It's always, leasing velocity is slow, the submarket's taken a turn, and no one's really clear about what's happening and whose fault it is, but they just know like the spreadsheets are going the wrong way, right? We're not going up and to the right anymore. Like numbers are looking a little off. And so that call for me definitely comes when that trust starts to wobble of, okay, is it interdepartmental or is it between the owner and the management team? Like, what's the root cause? And are there some, short-term fixes that we can put in place to rectify the problem? Or is this something that's at the core, a fundamental issue with the organization that we need to do maybe some heavy lifting? That's usually where I get called in. That's what the most fun has been. I get to put on like my little detective hat and kind of figure out, is it a marketing issue? Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes I get called in and, okay, well, yes, we were talking about leasing initially, but there's an operations or an asset management, there's a product problem. And so those are usually the triggers. It's when it hurts. It's not because they have free money to spend. That's for sure.
I 100% agree. I even coming from the technology side, you'd think I would be pushing technology. My first response is always, have you looked at your process yet?
Yes.
Are there opportunities to streamline, right? Because the easiest thing to do is a low tech solution. I don't necessarily want to introduce technology. However, we also do have to do that. I think, people were curious about it, but that was a last year thing. Now it's kind of, you have to do it. And there's a lot of pressure because it's like, wait, if we're not doing it and all of our competitors are, where does that leave us? And how do we go about applying AI or newer technologies to really create that operational leverage?
And what you're seeing most is they're starting to consider doing AI,
It's, it's really interesting. So Dana brings up the good point is that there is a lot of financial pressure. So margins are tight. The market is challenging right now. So technology spend is also a challenge. I talked to my friends on the product side, and they're all struggling with sales right now also. So investment decisions in technology are a challenge right now. So how do you make your product stand out from the product side? And on the management side, how do you know what technology to apply and choosing the right solutions that fit in your ecosystem and solve the problems that you need to solve? And I think it's just people aren't necessarily sure. So it's this balance of like, where should I be spending my money? How do I address the competitive landscape and what my competitors are doing? And how do I deal with my scale issues? Like I have my teams that I need them to do more with less, which is it's a age-old problem, but it's still there. And executives are always asking that.
Yeah, I think that lends itself honestly to AI, but it's like you've got to, I don't say spend to become more efficient, but I mean, some solutions out there are cost effective when it comes to like a agentic workforce. The whole idea is to save you time, get you out of the platform more, get your teams back to doing what they're doing great, and do it at less cost, right? With cost savings.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are you kind of feeling that same pressure, Dana, with the cost reductions?
Oh, definitely. I mean, everyone wants more for less, right? And so it might be easy to say, oh, well, I went to a conference and I saw this new shiny thing and it says it's going to solve all of my problems, right? And it's nice to believe that pipe dream, but most of the time that comes at a cost of some kind, right? So it might be inexpensive. It might be, oh, well, this is going to replace what XYZ is doing over here. So we can cut that, we can reallocate. But in order to do that effectively, you still have to have the right team in place to implement that. And that's where I think people get the most confused over, oh, like AI is coming for our jobs, it's going to take over, they're going to replace, they're not going to hire anymore, or they're going to try and downsize our team. It's just that these positions are going to evolve and to change. And those are the teams and those are the people that are going to be the most successful and have been over the last, let's say, even 5 years, are the ones that are adapting and that are innovative in that respect, but also mindful of the human capital that is required to implement, to test, to create that infrastructure, to bring in someone like Josh who understands this language. And it's just, again, not, oh, that's a great idea, let's just push it down the line, but at the end of the day it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think the most successful companies are those that aren't looking at AI to replace their workforce. They're looking to augment their workforce with digital teammates.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really kind of giving them that extra firepower to do what they need to do and kind of automate those redundant operational tasks that don't require as much human intervention.
And then how do you showcase, like you've done that, you brought AI in, you've made them more efficient. How do you showcase the value and the measurable impact to the organization?
That's a huge challenge. And I think that's look, proving ROI for any product, whether it's AI or not, is challenging. I have conversations with product teams all the time about how do you sell this to a management company, because the management companies, I mean, they are looking to cut costs, and you need to justify spend if you're going to introduce a new product. How is this going to improve my ROI or NOI? How is it going to save my team money? With AI, it's interesting because it's not, and Dana, you could probably speak more to this, but historically with like marketing spend, you spend more on ads, you get more leads. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
very kind of direct proportional relation, right? With when you're introducing AI, it's more abstract and it impacts kind of everything, but it's harder to attribute AI specifically to different measures. And that's something that we're trying to figure out. I think what product teams should be doing and what management companies should be looking at are kind of unique or specific instances, like especially in the productivity space. Like if I want to save my leasing team by introducing some AI product, if I'm going to save them 5 hours of work a week and that's spread out across 200 properties, what does that equal in like dollar savings, right? And you can do that. And then you can measure some of that going forward. So I think it's important to really identify what metric you want to address and
Mm-hmm.
apply technology to solve that piece and then measure against it. But it's not an easy thing to do by any means.
No, if it was easy, everyone would do it, right? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I'm in total alignment with Josh here. I mean, AI is one of those things, and I always say marketing is, there's an art and a science to it, right? There's the tangible metrics part of it, but there's also the creative vibes part of it. And AI can kind of be put in that same bucket in terms of, it's something it's shiny, it's trendy, it's a buzzword, it's what everyone's talking about. There's some new product tool, and every tagline of every prop tech company that I've worked with or seen in the last year, it's something AI powered, right? Like it's always like, okay, let's just get this buzzword in for search. But it is incredibly hard to quantify because it often prevents something. And prevention doesn't always, like to Josh's point, lead to, like, it's not as easy to streamline as a click-through rate, right? Like, okay, we spend this, we get this from this. But AI prevents a compliance issue. It flags mismatched fees. It catches an outdated listing. It, saves 10 hours a week of work, right? Like those are difficult to say, like from a risk perspective, because we have AI, those things didn't happen. So we didn't spend any money to rectify those problems because AI caught it in the first place. It's living in the gray for sure.
Yeah, I think from the lens of like the top of the funnel,
Mm-hmm.
we've put out a lot of research lately about just the discoverability, right? What the renter's doing. I mean, that journey's changed for what, 10 years since we've all known each other, basically, right? It's just constantly changing, evolving, and that's really fascinating right now, how impactful AI discoverability is and what the property management companies and marketing teams are doing to address that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously next to that is ultimately if they start on ChatGPT and search, and then they drive through to an ILS, and they go back to ChatGPT and they're looking at reviews, and then they go back to social pages and they're searching on social pages, and then ultimately it's the attribution challenge we've always had. But it's, in my opinion, I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. I mean, I think that education has to happen, particularly for the ownership groups, the presidents, I guess maybe the CFOs, to say this world's changed and we've got to really, shift how we're handling that.
So totally. Yeah. The renter journey is not linear by any, think about how you consume a product, right? Like if I'm looking for a new mattress, right? So I'm talking to friends, I'm looking online. Instagram is my Apple phone is listening to me right now. So when I open my Instagram app right after this call, all of a sudden Casper and Lisa and Purple and all those guys are going to be selling me ads. It's just a different world. And every day it's changing so much. But those benchmarks and, multifamily, as we always say, it's generally a little bit behind on the times. And that's something that, some of the big players with big marketing teams and a lot of funds behind them and a lot of data, they're just figuring this out, right? And so it's us kind of putting the pieces together, but then also understanding that our marketing teams today don't have a lot of capacity. They're putting out fires all the time. They're on, call after call after call. They have all of this information, all these different dashboards that are coming at them, monthly, weekly reporting and whatnot. None of those numbers match, by the way. So now they're manually exporting all of that. They're trying to just make their best guess as to where all of this information is coming from and how they want to be proactive and reallocating budget and numbers for the next month. But they're being held to a standard of, well, you guys should be the experts. You should have all this white space to come up with strategy. And there's a lot of conversation around that aspect of it where, we don't have a lot of time as marketing teams these days. And so how can we leverage AI and technology to help us find more time and take some of those repetitive routine tasks off of their plates?
They're also, on top of that, Dana, likely going into multiple applications in order to get those data and dashboards and workflows too. And where do they have to go to do their next task, right? So AI it's fascinating where it gets kind of interesting because it does remove that friction between systems. And we are getting to that point, especially with agentic AI. There was just the first rent payment through ChatGPT, which I found pretty fascinating. Yeah, so that was this week, I think, which is crazy. So it's really interesting to see where this goes, and it's really this kind of agenda to meet the customer where they are in a lot of ways, and try and keep them in that one place, and have the systems talk to each other. And it's kind of interesting because there's this two kind of different paths that people are taking, and AI has some influence on this, but this is really kind of historical also. You have these suites of products that all sit together, and then you have these distributed products that are kind of best of breed, right? What AI does is, regardless of which path you take, it just makes those connections so much more seamless, and it becomes almost a single pane of glass for people who are interacting with it, whether that's the renter or whether that's the management company looking at the data. It's going to be so much easier to go to one place and get everything that you need and have your workflows in one place, have your data produced in one place, and go and have that system that you talk to, and it talks back to you, and it will do the work of figuring out where everything is. So it's fascinating.
And we see this every day. I mean, SOCi's deeply embedded in the agentic workforce, right? I mean, we literally are shifting ourselves from a MarTech, software to an agentic workforce software. So we're deeply embedded in this. And then I look at, I just want to ask you guys, is this a lot or all you're doing? You talk, I mean, is this from a workload standpoint, excuse me, you guys doing a lot of this around AI? Is it just mostly your day, mostly your consulting gigs?
It's a lot of the conversation around my consulting days, but I wouldn't say it's most of my day. I think a lot of the groups that I work with are still some of the smaller shops, or they have a younger marketing team. And so I'm more or less mentoring and helping them think of the big picture strategy to level up, or they don't have a marketing team. And so I'm kind of serving as that fractional support. So a lot of the conversations that I'm having are more or less like, hey, I heard about this. Can you just tell me about it? But we're not ready for that necessarily. And that's where like I'm always asking the question of, okay, you heard about this tool. You are just saying a lot of AI buzzwords to me right now.
Mhm.
What problem are we trying to solve? Because let's figure out if within your existing tech stack, those solutions already exist, or if we were to bring in an AI provider and a new vendor partner, where do they fit with what you already have? Because again, if especially me, I'm not working with a team, a really deep marketing team that can, okay, we have an analyst over here, we have tech support over here, like we can figure it out if it doesn't work exactly out of the box like we were sold on. But if we don't have that, then okay, we're spending a lot of money, we're putting a lot of resources behind the onboarding for something to maybe not be the right thing. So we're, again, a lot of conversations, probably not a lot of action that I'm seeing on my side as of right now.
So when you say they're
I,
not ready,
Mhm.
like what is that? And I guess when you think about like, hey, we need help with AI, like what do you ask back, or what's the interaction like there? And I guess more so when they're not ready, is it because they don't know what they don't know, or are they scared, or are
It's
they what's
because they
the
don't know what they don't know.
yeah.
So it goes into like they come to me is usually with an idea of what problem that they have, and then within a couple of weeks of working together, it's usually very clear that what they thought the problem was either maybe an iceberg is the cusp of it, but there's some underlying issues that we need to kind of dig into and solve first. And that's where it's more or less, like a lot of the groups, like the property management softwares that they're using. If those infrastructures and those systems are not set up appropriately, their CRMs are kind of a hot mess. Well, I don't want to layer in an AI chatbot just to, pull something low off the list to help answer emails and phone calls, because I don't trust that when that is picked up, that's going to feed into the system appropriately. And now I just don't, now I have two systems that I'm managing again, and I don't know what things match up. So it's more or less, let's resolve and let's get the foundation strong before we try and build a house.
yeah, I think Dana hit the nail on the head for the most part, that you have to kind of figure out what the problem is that you're trying to solve. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of what we're seeing there, what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of shiny objects out there, and a lot of execs are attracted to those shiny objects, and they're like, we need to have that. And my response to that would be like, if your AI strategy starts with the tool, then you're doing it backwards.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to do is figure out where the problem is. What is the workflow that I need to change? What's the workflow that's causing me issues where I have inefficiencies, and where it would be effective and efficient to put in some sort of solution, likely an AI solution these days. And there are different ways that you can do that. Dana, you made a great point about looking at your existing stack. What do my existing tools do? Am I not using them to their fullest potential? And I think it's really taking that step back to figure out, what should I be looking at? Not, I need to implement AI or a chatbot or something else. It's, what do I need in my workflow, in my business, in order to make, technology needs to make your business better. And if it's just layering on another application or whatever, it's not doing that. You have to understand where it's going to have that impact.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I wanted to ask you, it's kind of specific and direct, but I mean, either of you, if you've worked on a recent AI adoption project, I'm curious what that looked like, what the roadmap was like, how you went about it. You have one you can perhaps share?
Josh,
You
you want to
don't
go
have to
first?
be
I was just
specific
thinking
to
about
clients
it.
or anything like that, just
So
more the use case of it.
Yeah,
so
no.
when, go on, Dana.
No, I mean, I don't have a successful one, but I have one. And it was more or less, it was not with a current client, but it was a prior. And it was more or less, some individuals went to a conference, they saw something really fun and shiny. They were, showed the flashy demo, they were taken out to a nice wine and, steak dinner. They come back and they say, we signed up the portfolio for X, with no consideration for how that system and tool was going to be integrated, who was going to be implementing that on our side, how the connections were going to be made. There were, no API configurations set up previously, so that it turned into, well, it's on the roadmap, so let's just manually do things for a little bit and kind of like limp along. And that was more or less the story of, hey, when you don't involve the right people in the conversation and in the decision, and you just go for it because it is new and exciting, and you get a deal. It's half price, or, first 30 days are free kind of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you decide to drive the car off the lot and you realize it's a lemon and it's too late. That's essentially what we got ourselves into that situation with. And then that's when you start misaligning your trust with the on-site teams, who now they're like, oh, great, something else. So even when you do have a product that you have vetted through the proper channels, and operations is on board, asset management, marketing, IT, accounting, everyone's on the same page, because you've had that failed rollout and that friction initially, now everyone's scared of anything that you try and bring to the table, even though you've gone through the proper processes. So that's not a great example, but it's a lessons learned.
But curious,
sure.
like, were you in that car when they drove off the lot?
I was not. I feel like I got
did
hit
they
by
pick
the
you up on the
car.
way and be
No,
like,
they
hey, we
hit
need
me in
help?
the car when they got back from the conference, and they said, Dana, we're so excited to tell you that we're going to be partnering with this person. I was like, that makes zero sense. First of all, we have a product that like halfway overlaps. So if you were interested in that piece of it, we could have just at least like re-engaged an existing partner to help, and then we could talk to the, like, it was just a whole, it was a lesson for everyone involved.
I would say, I think AI projects are similar to traditional technology projects also.
Yeah.
You have to really manage expectations. And that's actually gotten a lot harder with AI, because AI, executives think that all AI projects are like ChatGPT. You open up a window, you talk into it, and it gives you an answer, right? It's easy. Let me just turn it on. And that's not how these things work yet. And they probably will eventually, but even then it takes time. Even things like vibe coding, like everybody's like, oh, I'll just vibe code a solution, right? To a point, yes, but is that an enterprise grade solution? No. So you have to think about how you do these things, and you have to manage the expectations of the execs, and that's very hard to do. Similarly, you're 100% right on like the adoption side. If you're engaging with a site team to pilot a technology, you want to make sure that it's solving a problem for them and making their lives easier, and you need to do the due diligence upfront to kind of figure that out. So you have to really kind of get your advocates on board. You have like your test sites on board, make them part of the journey, and have them understand what you're trying to do and why you're going with a certain solution. And they have to buy into it, because if they're not going to buy into it and be advocates for the solution, then it's not going to be adopted. It's not going to grow. It's not going to stick in your organization. And you need to do all of that. And it's so I don't think it's like AI is now we have to think about differently how we deploy technology solutions. It's just an extension of how we've done in the past. The problem being is that the expectations are I feel like so much more out of whack now, because the execs think that it's all just super easy now, and it's still not there yet. So I think it's just something to be cautious about. But it doesn't mean you can't be successful. Like, I've been part of projects that, we've the most successful things right now are like not so much the agentic things, but like the more stable things like chatbots and things like that, which are generative AI, and that's, that counts, right? And they work. They save teams time. They create an excellent experience for prospects and residents. They even work for internal teams. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And it's just making sure that you kind of follow that technology, an implementation approach that you would with any technology project.
Yeah, Josh, I want to double down on what you said too about just setting the expectations, like that being the critical, getting the right people in the room is one piece, but then setting the expectations of what does deploying this look like? When are we actually going to see changes to the business? Like, I always try and set the expectation of like early ROI for AI is usually operational. It's in how we're working with the systems. It's changing the workflow. And it's later ROIs when it becomes like a financial add-on, right? There's a lot of companies that just demand like that immediate revenue impact. They're just like, oh, okay, well, we turned it on yesterday. I mean, I still see this with like Google ads, right? There's like, well, we just turned on the campaign yesterday. Why are we not tripling traffic? And why is my ad not the first one? It's very similar. It's a baseline and misunderstanding of, because some technology can be implemented that quickly and others cannot be. And AI adoption is really behavioral change first. We have to get the teams and the people that are utilizing the AI technology to use it. And that is a learned behavior. That's not like, oh, tomorrow I just now all of a sudden I'm an expert and this is how I work with the system. And once that is embedded, though, that's how you start seeing revenue impact start showing up.
Very good. Interesting. Well, look, this has been really insightful. You guys bring some incredible perspective. And I think the goal here is to give information and guidance to those that listen to us on this podcast. So in part two of this podcast, we're going to dig a little bit deeper, maybe in the application, a little bit more like what teams should be preparing for in 2027. But again, I appreciate you guys bringing this perspective to this. And so if those that are listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss part two. It's a natural continuation of this conversation, which I've enjoyed, and I think others will as well. So I think honestly, things are going to be a little bit more interesting as well. So we'll see you there. Thank you for your time.